Good evening. I'm Scott Jones, the editor of the 2017 Martian Migraine Press anthology Cthulhusattva Tales of the Black Gnosis. And I've been doing little author interviews with the various writers who have stories appearing in the anthology. Tonight I'm talking with Vrai Kaiser from, where are you actually calling from, Vrai?
Colorado.
Colorado.
Perfectly
Fantastic.
sober before anyone needs to ask.
Okay. Thank you for that. So basically, Vrai has this a wonderful story in Cthulhusattva. I was very happy to read it because it certainly hit on a lot of the themes that we were. The themes were difficult for this book. As editor, I have to admit to a certain you know gleefulness in presenting this difficult theme to writers, which was, of course, try to take Lovecraft's mythos and mine some kind of spiritual truth out of what is essentially a sort of an atheistic slash nihilistic world and worldview. And Vrai really sort of hit it out of the park with Keys in Stranger Deserts. Can you tell us a little bit about your process with the story, Vrai? How you got the idea, and what pushed you to write it the way you did with those characters in that particular situation? No spoilers or anything, but
I'll do my best.
okay.
Well, you after I contacted you about the prompt, you had mentioned or that you had your nonfiction book available for people who wanted to send in stories. So that was a really nice way to start. I sort of skimmed over that to get an idea of what the highlights you'd taken from the stories were. And then I figured, start with what you know. I've always had a real fondness for the Herbert West, less the stories and more the adaptations that came out of it. So I figured I would at least start with Miskatonic and, Evil Dead and the Necronomicon and that, and then see where I could take that was interesting without falling into those pitfalls of, if there is some kind of unconscious pull on this kind of thing, what might that be? And then the other element of it, my other character, who's a con artist, I had this thought that if this is as widespread as Lovecraft makes it seem, up on the East Coast, then there has to be somebody who's trying to make a buck off of this. There's got to be somebody who's tried to make money off of this. And who are they and what are they doing? I would like to know about that.
Your con artist is she's of the classic type too. You can just feel her grifting from the get go, and but what's interesting, I think, is that you have. I mean, she's great, but your protagonist. Can you remind us what the name? I've been reading so much these days. I've completely forgotten the name of your protagonist.
Oh my god! I wrote that story 6 months ago.
Anyways, she's quite lovely, and certainly not the sort of something that I was really trying to avoid with this book and the stories in the book were, of course, as you mentioned, the classic Lovecraftian tropes being sort of done to death. And I wanted to avoid protagonists who were essentially nervous university types who have real trouble when it comes to being presented with information about the other, whether it's the great old ones or it's knowledge other than what they've been told is true, or other types of persons, other ways and modes of being. And she's great in that respect. She's basically carted off on this transcontinental journey, in tow with this other woman who is clearly using her.
Really making no bones about that at a certain point.
Oh yeah, no, it's not a healthy relationship by any means, and yet she uses her knowledge to basically process that and come out on the other side the victor in a very sort of in a very real way. Not only does she prevail over this person who's basically had her in her thrall, but she advances her knowledge of the universe and of how it works. And yeah, really like that. Really like that aspect of it. We didn't. She's not this wilting violet who just cowers before the mythos and says, "Well, that's that."
I liked the idea of a sort of angrier kind of character than Lovecraft tends to go for. Because he does have these very retiring sorts of people, and I wanted to think about somebody who is interested in this knowledge, like as you say, I suppose, not afraid of this knowledge that they've found, but really interested in what it could mean and what it could do for them, and not even knowing that it's probably going to make her life worse in this case. That pure pursuit of knowledge is a kind of an admirable thing in its way.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's something that I think, not to get all philosophical about it, but I think as a society we've kind of fallen away from that sort of drive. Our knowledge is now, particularly in sort of the tech sector or in terms of entertainment, if it can make a pretty thing that you can sell, then it's good science and good knowledge. And it's like, well, maybe not necessarily. Perhaps we should go a different way. Another reason why I liked Keys and Stranger Deserts. It just says that there's, as you have this imagery of doors in deserts and in wasted spaces and places that we can go to sort of, what it reminded me of? A little bit of that old school Carlos Castaneda.
Oh yeah?
Just a little bit. Have you read any of that? The whole idea that, the world is basically assembled by our viewpoints, and all you got to do is shift that assemblage point via sorcerous means, and off you go. You rebuild another world for a different, from a different perspective.
Interesting. So it's a little bit, if I might use a, more Luddite contemporary reference, it's very, the last two episodes of Evangelion.
A little bit.
Yeah, see, it's all relative.
A little bit. Fantastic. I didn't think we'd throw in an anime reference in there, so kudos to you. Fantastic.
That's just my life. Well, 5 minutes. It was time.
It is, and I actually wanted to talk to you about that because you've got this wonderful sideline. Well, maybe it's not a sideline so much. I've read some of your rewatch of the Gravity Falls series.
Oh yeah,
and I'm finding just delightful.
Wow, thanks.
Well, I've only just introduced my family and my oldest boy to Gravity Falls, and he's 5, so he doesn't grok any of it, except that it's a cartoon and Daddy laughs and there's some funny bits and he likes a few of the characters. But what a clever show, and your rewatches are great to read.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. That's a great show, with very much in those Lovecraftian themes, especially you get into the later episodes.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
Also, I went and looked it up because I was so ashamed. Her name is Dev, my protagonist.
Oh, right, Dev. Yes. Right.
She goes by her last name, which is Devereaux, because her first name is Nichelle. And
because her mom was a big Star Trek fan.
Right. Can't believe I forgot that. It's so embarrassing.
That's okay. This is the writing life. Ask me to name any of the characters and anything I've done. It's like, there's that guy, and then what's her name? Hold on.
That was a year of my life ago, and I just put stories in past that.
Exactly.
But I love them very much. You don't understand.
Neglected children once they're out in the world. But that's this is why I'm happy to have Keys and Stranger Deserts in Cthulhusattva, because people are going to be enjoying that, and I think it's an interesting aspect of the writing life, is that once we're done with them, we're kind of done. It's like by the time these things get published, you've actually moved on and you've written a bunch of other stuff, and then that's always the process. But Dev is always going to be fresh for somebody who comes upon the book.
I really hope so, because you go to Lovecraft, he just didn't write any particularly interesting women at
No.
all. And even if you get into like the good adaptations, like the Stuart Gordon films, there's
Right.
like poor Barbara Crampton is trying her heart out, but she doesn't have much to work with, and oh, it hurts my heart.
She's done all right for herself, though.
It's true.
She's
Never gotten the respect she deserves. She's amazing in From Beyond.
It's true. It's true. That's a killer film in many respects. In many respects, it's interesting that you mentioned Lovecraft's female characters. I was chatting with a friend earlier, and even one of his more powerful female characters, Asenath Waite, right? If
Right.
I'm pronouncing that correctly, Asenath Waite.
I'm going to defer to you on that one.
What's that? You're going to defer? Anyways, that Waite woman with the peculiar name. It turns out, as you're reading the narrative of the thing on the doorstep, it turns out that she's actually her father. She's her father's spirit has basically kicked her out and dumped her in a Shoggoth somewhere in the nether pits of Earth, and is running around in her body, and is basically looking to inhabit her husband's mind, because there's peculiar things to a male brain that a sorcerer needs.
Oh my god!
Right? So through the entire story that you're reading, it's not actually, it's this weird,
Right.
gendered, messing around that you don't quite pick up on if you're not doing a close reading. And of course, this person I was talking to had been doing close reading. I'm like, oh my God, you're right. Totally. You're right. So even when he was writing women, he was writing men. It's just, he gets a lot of flack, but I think that's, quite deserved in some cases.
And I mean, well, he's one of those authors that, thank God, he didn't write so much good stories as he wrote good concepts. So I've been able to outlive him.
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of the reason we do what we do at Martian Migraine, is that there's so many interesting toys to play with in that universe, and there's always going to be fresh stuff. We can say goodbye to Lovecraft, and that'll make some people mad who are listening, but he was thanks, Grandpa, for your help, but we're going to take your stuff and run with it. Exactly. And you certainly ran with it with Keys and Stranger Deserts, and I think it's a really strong story, and I'm super chuffed to have it in the book. Thank you very much, Vrai.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been a really, really great process.
Cool. Glad to hear it.
All right.
So if people want to read your Gravity Falls rewatch things, or any or read your blog, where can they go?
Well, there's a website, but if you Google Vrai Kaiser, VRAIKAISER, it'll take you to pretty much everything you need. I've got a blog, I'm on Tumblr, Twitter, all that good stuff. And come say hi.
And you write for the Mary Sue too, is that correct?
I do. I recap Gravity Falls and Steven Universe and Rick and Morty when it's on, and I occasionally do a feature piece.
Nice. Good stuff. All right, Vrai, thanks very much. I'll let you get back to your evening.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Good night. Good night.